Hey everybody, my name is Alex Singer. I'm going to be taking over from here, and we're going to get started with enhancing readability through document design. Basically, you don't want your pages to be cluttered. It's going to look unprofessional. It's going to be hard for your readers to read, and it's going to reflect badly on you. So what we want to do is make your documents look professional. And we want to make it easy to read for your readers. There's a couple techniques that'll help you greatly improve this, and first one is going to be employing white space. White space is exactly what it sounds like. White space on the page. Basically, you don't want text all over the page. You want to kind of space stuff out. You want it organized, neat, formatted correctly. Some things you can do to increase white space are going to be to use a heading, a bulleted, or a numbered list. The next is going to be proper use of margins and text alignment. In the business world, the margins are generally an inch to an inch and a half on either side of the page, and the text is it's a hard left, which means everything on the left-hand side of the page is in line, and a ragged right, which means that it's not in line. The sentences can be different lengths, but the left-hand side, everything needs to be in line, unless you're indenting a paragraph or something like that. Next is going to be appropriate use of typefaces and fonts. Most people think that typefaces are fonts, but there's actually a subtle difference. Typefaces are going to be like Arial, Sanskrit, Times New Roman, things like that. And fonts are going to be the effects you can use on those typefaces. So bolden, italicize, underline. You really don't want to use fonts too much, or it's going to look kind of silly. But it's okay to italicize something if you want to put emphasis on it, or underline something if you want to put emphasis on it and make it stand out. You just don't want to overuse that. And as far as the typefaces go, you want to make sure that you use appropriate typefaces to fit the tone of your message. So if you have a professional message, you're going to want to use Times New Roman or maybe Arial, and you want the same typeface throughout the whole document. But if you're doing something kind of silly, goofy, maybe if you're inviting your coworkers to a volleyball game, you could very well use like Comic Sans or something like that. The next is going to be to enhance readability. You might want to use numbered lists or bulleted lists. There's a slight difference between the two. Numbered lists are sequential, so that means like if you have a cooking recipe, then it's going to be in order. It's going to be you need to do this, then this, and this. And the bulleted lists are going to be completely independent. So using that same example, let's say the shopping list for that recipe, items you need to get is just going to be X, Y, and Z, and they're not in any specific order. Next is going to be adding headings for visual impact. Headings are just kind of bolden words, phrases. They help group similar ideas together. So if you're doing a document about job interviews, you might want to have one heading that says proper attire, one that says proper format of your resume. You want to group similar things together, and it helps it helps you look more professional, and it makes it easier for your readers to read your document. Let's go to the next slide here. Proofreading to catch errors. This is a big one in all aspects of business: documents, memos, messages, even emails. So really, there's a lot you want to look for, but the big ones are spelling, grammar, punctuation, format, and we're going to go over that. So spelling, the book says just use your computer's spell checker. I use Word, but I have a Grammarly edition. It's much more in-depth. I highly recommend it. But the book also says that you don't want to completely rely on your computer. You're going to want to go over that manually, read it yourself, and because your computer doesn't catch everything. Next is going to be grammar. You're going to want to make sure that the subjects agree with the verbs. You have all complete sentences. And again, your computer looks at this for you while you're typing, but you don't want to rely solely on your computer, because if you have a mistake in your business message or memo, it's going to make you look unprofessional, and your audience is immediately going to point it out. You know, when the teacher hands out a paper and there's a spelling error, it immediately gets addressed. Next is punctuation. If you're asking a question, you want to have end that with a question mark. You want to make sure there's commas where there needs to be commas and all that. Names and numbers is a big one. Most of the time you want to make sure numbers are written out unless they're really large numbers in the thousands. Names, the book basically says you want to go over every name because if you misspell somebody's name, they're immediately going to dislike you. It says names are important. You want to make sure they're all capitalized and all spelled correctly. Formats, basically you want to use Appendix B to compare formats. You want your format to be all the same through all memos, all messages. You want it all to be coherent and neat, professional looking. The book has a really good figure on page 104. Is figure 4.6, and that has a little key of all the proofreading marks. So there's all kinds of marks when it appears proofreading, and so you might want to take a look at that. It's there's like a mark for delete this, add a comma, change punctuation. There's a little key for that, and each one has a different mark. So that might be good to memorize if you make a lot of mistakes. When you're using spell check, you can just press the down arrow and it'll take you one line at a time, show you all the mistakes in that line, and that way you're not kind of overwhelmed looking at everything at once. And the last thing is take breaks. You don't want to write your thing immediately and then go right to proofreading. You're going to want to maybe sit down, come back to it, maybe have a peer proofread it. You just want to cover all your bases. When you have mistakes in your documents, it makes you look really unprofessional, and we don't want that. Let's go to the next slide here. Evaluating the effectiveness of your message. So once your document's all written out, your message is complete, you want to sit down and look at that. There's a lot of questions you need to ask yourself. You want to say, is it polished? Did I do the best I could do? Is it clear enough to convince the reader that you're worth listening to? Have you established rapport in your paper? And are you a credible source? Do you come out professionally? This is all addressed in that question. The next is, how successful will this message be? This is an important one because if you read your message and you think, I don't think this is going to be successful, you don't want to just go for it. You want to rewrite the thing or edit it. You want to have faith and believe in your work, or because if you don't think it's going to be successful, then the audience probably isn't going to think it's successful either. Next is, does it say what you want it to? Does it come off how you want it to? Does it say everything you need to do? Did you leave anything out? This is all addressed in that aspect. Will it achieve its purpose? This is basically repeating the other question. And then the last is, how will you know if it succeeds? And that leads right into our last point, which is ask for feedback. You're going to want to take your paper, maybe hand it to a peer or a coworker, say, what do you think of this? And you can ask them these questions. You can say, you think it'll be good? Do you think it'll be successful? And if they say no, you should listen to them and hear them out and maybe make those changes that they recommend. And then last here is going to be our summary. So Ivan went over these, but it's going to be complete business messages by revising for conciseness. You want everything to be clear. You don't want to use extra wordy stuff. You want it all to be nice and neat. Improve clarity in business messages by keeping ideas simple. This is kind of the same thing. You don't want to be overly complex. Enhance readability by understanding document designs. This goes with what I started with format and all the different design aspects. You want everything to be coherent, neat, organized. Recognize proofreading problem areas. So we went over the big proofreading problems: spelling, grammar, punctuation, names, numbers. And last is evaluating your message to judge its effectiveness. So thank you. I hope you learned enough to do good on the test for lesson 4.